You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Mirror's associate editor, Kevin Maguire, and the Telegraph's deputy comment editor, Annabel Denham. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. What they did to our beautiful Brianna will haunt us forever. The Daily Mail leads with an emotional quote from the parents of Brianna Ghey after two teenagers were found guilty of her murder. And that's the same with the Mirror also leading with Brianna. The Eye predicts tax cuts next year after what it describes as a surprise fall in inflation. The Times also leads with inflation, with cheaper mortgage rates set as inflation drops. The Express urges MPs to grant Dame Esther Rantzen the chance to hear a debate on assisted dying after she revealed she joined the Swiss assisted dying clinic Dignitas. The Financial Times speaks to the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who says he's willing to look into claims that an official from his government ordered the assassination of a Sikh separatist in the US. The Guardian leads with an exclusive on how police officers will be able to run facial recognition of driving licence holders under a law change being introduced by the government. The Metro has the story of a 78-year-old British millionaire who was kidnapped by an Ecuadorian crime syndicate and whose girlfriend is now being questioned by police. And apocalypse soon, says the front of the Daily Star, as it warns that old people who are flatulent and burping are behind global warming. They can hear you giggling, you two.
It doesn't say flatulent, does it?
No. Yeah. I changed the word to flatulent.
Yeah.
Reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Kevin Maguire and Annabel Denham. Sorry, I'm still smiling. You're not to insert the word that was really in the headline.
It sounded like darting, I think, didn't it?
Right, let's move from that to the economy and the front page of the Financial Times. Looking at the inflation figures, doing a lot better than previously predicted. You take us into this, Kevin.
Right, yeah. Prices are now going up 3.9% instead of 4.6%, so the rate has fallen by 0.7%. It was predicted to go down by 0.2%, which is good news. It's the lowest for more than 2 years, and it's leading, as the FT say, to this expectation that interest rates will now start falling rather than going up again. I think more than a dozen increases we had to 5.25%. Although the first increase, if we look in the middle of the FT, says markets now expect a 0.25 percentage point cut by May, which is some time off. But for the government, it is good news politically, but for people, it's good news too when inflation falls. Whether the government gets any benefit is another matter.
Annabel?
Yes, that's right. It's certainly on the face of it good economic news. Inflation erodes money in people's pockets and makes them feel poorer. We've been longing for it to come down for many months now. The Bank of England has particularly wanted it to come down because it's been scrutinised, criticised for failing to raise interest rates quickly enough during the pandemic. It took it until December 2021 to begin to raise interest rates, and even then it did so very slowly, insisting that inflation was transitory. It finally woke up to the crisis that was unfolding, so it'll be with a sigh of relief that we have this announcement. I wonder whether it will bring down inflation rates a little bit sooner than it's currently saying. What it wants to do is manage people's expectations, ensure that they're not going out and asking for higher pay rises and so on and so forth. So perhaps people will get some relief before May 2024. That being said, with the situation unfolding in the Red Sea, the impact that it's having on global shipping, it's not impossible, unfortunately, that we may face another inflationary cycle far sooner than we would otherwise like, which is terrible news for the Bank of England and, of course, also for the Conservative government, which has been longing for a positive economic news story. And I'm not sure the party will be able to survive another cost of living crisis.
No, it's interesting. The FT says, points out the FTSE 100, the stock market rose 1%, but the pound fell slightly against the dollar as a result, presumably because if interest rates come down, then...
Lower gains.
Yeah, lower gains. But look, the big damage when inflation topped 10% is kind of going to be there on people's standard of living for some time. It's not all of a sudden reversed. And I suppose it's fair to say that 3.9% is nudging double the Bank of England target of 2%. It's good. It's good news, better news, however you want to put it. But people have still taken a huge hit over the last 24 months, and wages followed inflation up. I suspect wages will follow inflation down now.
And Annabel, Rishi Sunak made it one of his pledges, didn't he, to bring inflation down. Do you think he will get credit for that, or will the experts be saying, well, this is not of his making, this was going to happen, whatever?
He'll certainly try and take credit for it. I'm not sure how it's going to land. Let's not forget that it's possibly the only one of his 5 pledges as set out in January this year that the government is going to be able to meet. Certainly hasn't stopped the boats or cut NHS waiting lists, nor has it brought down the debt or delivered economic growth. So I imagine that number 10 will be clinging on to the fact that inflation has indeed been halved. But as you say, it's really in the gift of the Bank of England, who are able to pull that interest rates lever in order to bring down demand in the economy. So, it depends how well that's going to play with voters. But just to underscore, as Kevin has said, the important thing is that people should be feeling the impact of inflation a lot less now than they were.
It's a 4 out of 5 failure rate, isn't it? 80% he's missed of his 5 targets, but he's only got 1. He didn't. Do you think it matters that he would take no blame for inflation going up, which he wouldn't? And of course, a lot of it was fueled by Putin and Ukraine and what happened globally. He wouldn't take any blame. Do you think he therefore deserves no gain, no praise when it comes down?
Well, you say that he wouldn't take any blame, but what's been quite interesting over the last few months is the reluctance of the government to lay blame at the door of the Bank of England. They've actually been very cautious in not directly criticising Andrew Bailey and the Monetary Policy Committee for the quite obvious errors, the widely recognised errors that they did make during the pandemic and after, and mistakes also that were made following the outbreak of the war in Ukraine during the energy crisis. So we'll see.
And Kevin, the repercussions of inflation falling, potentially tax cuts we could see in 2023.
Yeah, the I seem to do this story regularly on a Wednesday night for first day's papers. We've been here before. There's going to be a budget in the spring of next year, and taxes are going to be cut. I think inflation could have gone up, and they would still intend to cut taxes because there's a political cycle as well as whatever is happening financially. But I suppose, does it make it easier to cut tax when inflation has fallen? In fact, if inflation's falling and it's not eating into your living standards in the same way, you could argue there's less incentive or need to cut taxes. But I can see why the government will do it when it's pushed up the tax overall take to its highest level, this side of the Second World War, or just about this side of the Second World War?
Yes,
but no,
hit 70-year high.
But it's a recurring theme of the eye, this.
Well, yeah, I suppose in some ways predicting that there will be tax cuts in an election year is a bit like predicting that the sun's going to shine at some point in the summer, even in the UK. Yes, I think most people now are anticipating that Jeremy Hunt will slash taxes at the spring budget. He, of course, announced that cuts to national insurance, to the recent autumn statement, as well as making full expensing permanent, so a tax break for businesses that will really help encourage investment there. But that definitely a sense, particularly from the Conservative backbenchers, that the government wasn't going far enough and that it needed to commit to cuts to personal taxation, many expecting that there will be a 1-2% reduction in, or 2p cut to income tax.
Let's move now to the Mirror, your paper, Kevin, and the gruesome story, the murder of Brianna Ghey. The quote on the front page, her parents will never stop loving her.
It's a horrific, dispiriting story, this, when kids kill a kid. And the parents, they're quoted, mother Esther, father Peter, saying she was larger than life, and you see all the pictures, she looks very happy. You often get this picture, I just think it's a distorted picture, of kids that are trans are somehow really troubled. She doesn't, she just seems a really lovely kid, and unfortunately too warped, as they've been described. 15-year-olds have killed her, but your heart goes out to the parents, and of course they'll never stop loving her. They'll cling to the memories, but the pain never goes. I know people who've lost kids. That's it's there for the end of your days.
An interesting thoughts from Brianna's mother Esther today, that she also feels compassion for the families of the killers, because their lives have been destroyed also.
She was saying they'd also lost children in some way, and I just thought that was such a compassionate, as you say, such a brave thing for her to think of and for her to voice. And it, as Kevin says, it's just such a profoundly sad story. There's nothing, that you can really take away from it. There's nothing that it's so difficult to understand what drove these two 15-year-olds themselves, so young, to commit this terrible, terrible act, which has not only taken Brianna away, but of course it's destroyed the lives of the people who loved her. And what a contrast on the cover of the Mirror there of this, as you say, very happy 16-year-old and the anguish on the faces of her parents. It's just a truly awful.
It is, and the Mail, Kevin, describing the 15-year-old murderers as having a thirst for killing.
Yeah, they're known as X and Y, and then applications will be made tomorrow to name them, so we can know more about them. I don't know what the court will decide, but the girl 15 was fascinated by serial killers, including Harold Shipman and California's Night Stalker, and the boy was socially awkward. And sorry, it's what lessons can we learn? How much was transphobia a motive? Is how the trans issue is discussed? Does that add to the hostility of some people? And of course, just this week, guidance has been published by the government for how it should be dealt with in schools. Now, is that going to measure up? Is it right? Is it do they get the balance right, or do they get it wrong? But it is awful. It's just, it's absolutely, it's rare for kids to kill kids, but when it happens, because of that, it just hurts you even more.
And the police have said, haven't they, that it wasn't motivated in any way by the fact that Brianna was transgender, but nonetheless, I fear that there will be many transgender young people in Britain today who will feel less safe as a consequence.
They will be fearful indeed. Annabel and Kevin, for the moment, thank you. We're going to take a break. Coming up, civil liberties groups are worried about government plans to allow the police to use driving licences in facial recognition technology. We'll be discussing that next. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching the press preview. Still with me, Kevin Maguire and Annabel Denham. Let's have a look at this story in The Guardian, on their front page, in fact. And this is about police getting access to 50 million driving licences in order to run facial recognition checks. Is this a problem? Do you have a problem with the idea of this?
Well, it's been done quietly, according to The Guardian. I wasn't aware of it, so I think it probably is being done quietly in a criminal justice bill. And facial recognition itself is a controversial issue on live protest, because it sometimes picks up people from certain communities, some people of colour and not others, and it can get it wrong. But would it be wrong in principle to allow the police to look at driving licence photographs or passport photographs or whatever else we have. I don't think it would be wrong, but it would be how you do it in what cases. If it was somebody, like somebody's dropped a crisp packet, I'm not saying you should drop crisp packets, I think it'd be wrong. But if you're hunting a murderer and you see somebody leaving the scene of a murder and you have a clear picture and you can put it into a database and catch them, then I would think that was a good idea. So my position would be it is how it is operated and what controls are there, because it does infringe your freedom and it can infringe your civil liberties and human rights.
Annabel, the changes in a single clause in a new criminal justice bill and could put every driver in the country in a permanent police lineup, as reported by The Guardian, and privacy campaigners.
Yes, I have some sympathy with those who will push back against this on concerns that it compromises people's civil liberties. One of the issues is going to be consent, that 50 million people gave images for travel purposes, and they will now find out that retroactively they'll be part of secret lineups. There'll be concerns that you cannot treat so many people as suspects when they are innocent and just simply going about their daily business. And I think another issue is that what this potentially underscores is just how broken policing is in Britain today. And there are a number of people, I imagine, who will take issue with the fact that their freedoms need to be infringed in order that the police can do their jobs properly, rather than having a proper look at why it is that we're unable to more effectively police in this country. We've seen a decrease in funding going to the police. Until recently, the number of police officers was depleted. There's so many issues with policing, with our criminal justice system, and I'm not convinced that this is necessarily the solution.
But I could endorse all those points you make and criticisms of how it's gone. But is it wrong to use technology as technology advances? And for instance, the police can put your car registration into a database if your vehicle is seen there. So why not be able to put the
as you
face
pointed
of somebody?
out, the technology isn't 100% all the time.
Yes.
There have been flaws with it falsely identifying black and Asian people.
That's an issue. I would hope you couldn't get a conviction just on a picture. But it might give you a lead.
What's the point? It's not helping to build a case.
Yeah, but it might give you a lead to pursue.
OK, something completely different now. The Duchess of Sussex, she's made a return to acting, so the Metro tells us.
She always finds a way to make it back into the headlines, doesn't she? Meghan Markle, yes. She's
the headline writers put her in the headlines.
Oh, that's true. But, she manages to stay in the news. But she has played a background extra for an advert for a coffee company that she holds shares in. She's been an investor in Clever Blends since 2020. Now, the Metro, as generously describing it as not quite the starring role she had in Suits. I think it's a very short appearance that Meghan is giving, and very much as an extra rather than an actress.
Sending herself up in a Girl Friday appearance, so says the article. We must leave it there. We've run out of time. Thank you both for taking us through the papers. We'll see you in the 11 o'clock hour. In the meantime, let's take a look at the weather for you now.